So yeah, you can go ahead.
All right. So hopefully,
Cool.
hopefully everybody that was watching before will be able to find the new link and keep watching. But no, Cam, and that's awesome. And the reason that I was asking you those questions, to be honest, was, I have people that are calling me about refinances that have done all of this massive work, and
Yep.
I put $100,000 into it, and I'm pulling up Redfin and Zillow and Realtor.com. Obviously, I'm not an appraiser, but I still have to have some sort of idea when I put this loan
Of course.
together that the value is there, right? That I'm
Yep.
doing somebody the justice. I'm not spending their money on an appraisal for a loan that's never going to go, never going to close. So, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing 640 and they're telling me their house is worth 750, and then I'm saying, well, why, I'm not seeing that. Is there something, did you
Yeah.
add a bathroom? Did you add a bedroom? A lot of times that information isn't going to show up on those public websites, right? So that
Yep.
obviously is going to give you some more value. And many times they'll say, well, no, I just put $100,000 into my house. Okay, that's good. And we hope that you love it and that you plan to stay there forever and that you're not leaving,
Yep.
because really I want people to hear me and say, improvements are for you. Improvements are for
Yep.
your way of life. Improvements are for you to enjoy where you live, and nowadays where you work and where you school and where you eat. And, we're not going out to restaurants and we're not sending the kids off to school and we're not going off to our offices. Everybody's working remote. And, so you're spending a lot of time at home, and it is fantastic to keep that house up and the pride of homeownership. But don't think if you put in $100,000, you're going to get your 100,000 out. You're just not.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, and obviously we can't give numbers, right? Because every single house is so different, and the upgrades that they do are different. And one person did wood, and one person did tile, and one person did quartz, but the other person did marble. So you can't really put a dollar on it, right? But I would say if
Yep.
you're in a 2,000 square foot tract house and you're basically exactly the same as your neighbor, and your neighbor just sold for 700,000, and it was dated, but in great shape, but dated, and your house is absolutely to the nines of beautiful, brand new done, I can't see getting more than $30,000 more.
I think you're absolutely right. I think 30,000 is, and I'm sure some of the people watching might, start trying to dox me and figure out where I live when I say this, but it might not even be that. And so that's why what we really should be doing as appraisers is, again, we're praying in a scenario like that we have something that we can go off of to say, okay, here's one that's completely updated. And of course, it's never, we know from experience, it's never so perfect that you have a model match that's like everything's the same except for the condition. It just doesn't work like that. So our job is to try and kind of sift through those comps, throw out ones that are not really good market indicators in any way for us, and maybe find one that's bigger and has been updated, and then try and extract out the square footage difference, and then how much of, really the difference is, let's just say, square footage and condition, and try and extract out what the percentage of the difference is allotted to the square footage versus what is the percentage that's allotted to the condition. So that's what we're supposed to try to do. I think the scenario you present is very realistic. And gosh, I can think of appraisal. I can think of an appraisal off the top of my head where the guy just spent, a typical thing. Everyone's home from COVID, so they're like, screw this, we're updating the house. We can't stand to be here. We should have done this years ago. And he spent like 150 grand doing his house, and up the street was a house that was updated as well that sold for, 780. And so we appraised his for around that same price, but he was upset because he had a view. And so we're like, well, that's true.
Yeah.
And it was a bummer because I knew as soon as I walked out of that property, I'm like, this is going to be really tough because there's like 3 houses on this entire street that have that view. So we're going to have to go somewhere else to try and extrapolate what a view maybe similar would bring, and when there's not a good market indicator to say that, unfortunately, we can't just make it up. We have to prove it.
Right.
So if unfortunately we're kind of working with what we have in every appraisal. Sometimes we have great comps that really show that everything you did is worth a ton and the market is responding really well to those things, or those updates or the view or the pool or whatever. And then a lot of times we don't. We have to work with the comp pool that's there and try and extrapolate as best we can. And it's not a perfect science. A lot of, I think when people ask me about appraising, they think almost like the Wizard of Oz. Behind the curtain is just some extravagant operation, that of all this high level math and technology
Right.
and
Yeah. There's nothing that's in your appraiser's book that says of you add
is
X.
this
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And God, would our lives be easier if it were? But it's just not the reality. The market, every market is different, and as you literally keep condensing your market down to even the track, it changes. So that's why what we have to do is sift through all that data and try and pull out what we think is the most relevant to the report. So yeah, I digress. Your scenario is a good one. And I tell people, I have friends of mine, one of them is a designer. She's thinking about putting this Italian marble tile flooring in. She's saying, what do you think that's going to get me in the market? I'm like, not even close to what you're going to pay to put it in.
The same as
So
the Home
I said,
Depot tile will give you.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, please do it and enjoy it. If it's going to make you happy, do it. Enjoy it. Don't look at stuff like that as like, how much am I going to get out of the market in this? Most repairs or upgrades to your house, most, not all, are not going to get you back for just that one thing that you would get in the market. That's
Right.
what I try to tell people.
Yeah.
Do stuff that makes you happy, enjoy your house.
Oh, absolutely. So, we had some problem with the sound, so we literally had to get out of Facebook and YouTube and Twitch, and then we had to get back in, and we're back in, and everybody's starting to say hi that they're back. So, Heidi, I know you're listening to Cam, and I guarantee you've got some questions you want to throw into that feed, so please do that for us. Heidi's usually on the show with me, but since we had you on today, she's typing away in the background, so I want her to actually throw some feedback in here. I know.
I'm sorry.
No, absolutely not. This is fantastic. You're great, and Heidi loves it when she doesn't actually have to get on the show. So it is no sweat off her back, trust me. And it looks like Deborah's back in, and my Aunt Pam came to town. So there's a little bit more of my family that's watching. I love that. If you guys have questions for Cam,
awesome.
Please put them in the feed. We'd love to answer them for you. You guys are listening Saturday morning on Go Country. I hope you guys are enjoying this. This is Cam Robinson with RR Appraisals. I always call him Cam. It's Cameron. But Cam knows what he's talking about. He knows his stuff. We've got Carrie Margulies on. She says, I'm here. Love the topic. So Carrie's actually another mortgage mom. She works for the team, one of my loan officers. Carrie's just an absolute doll. She's amazing. And so we've got some people all jumping back in right now to let us know. She's telling me she loves my hair. So, hey guys, if you're listening Saturday morning and you can't see me, you got to go over to YouTube and you got to see what my hair looked like because everybody's commented about it today. But no, this is such great stuff, Cam. And everybody listening, guys, you have questions, feel free to reach out, get on my calendar, schedule an appointment. It's all about a consultation. Let's talk about your house. If you want to do improvements, upgrades, you're buying a house, you're having a bid over the cost of what, is listed for sale. Those are all of the things that we're talking about today. Call the office, get on the books, talk to me. So it's 844-935-3634. If you guys are on YouTube or you're on Facebook, please hit the like button. That does help my algorithm. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and make sure you click that all button so that you do know when we go live. So Cam, back to the improvements, because I think that that's a big topic. And I think people buying homes want to do improvement. I think it was great that we touched on the fact that, do it to love it, to live in it, for a pride of homeownership, to enjoy where you are. But don't do it thinking that you're going to get dollar for dollar in your investment that you put in. Truly, it just doesn't work that way. But one of the things that I do want to ask, so Heidi's saying, and I only don't like being on live because I don't ever look as good as you, Deb. All right, thanks, Heidi. I appreciate it. But one of the things that is a big deal right now that people are doing, so number one, let's talk about the garage, because there's a lot of, garage going on, right? So let's,
Yes.
say that you've got just nothing but rafters and there's no insulation. And then you've got the house that's got the, it's fully, drywalled and beautiful cabinets all over the place and the built-in, sink for the laundry. Is this giving us an upgrade, or is this going to be kind of similar to, hey, the house down the street that's the same cookie cutter with the regular old garage? You're not really getting much out of that. I guess what I'm trying to figure out from you is, where can we pull? Maybe what's the best places to put the money if we're hoping for the return in the investment?
Great question. So garages are, obviously I'm speaking to what I know, which is Southern California here. especially now with COVID and kids being at home and having to do school from different rooms and all this stuff, garages, as you can imagine, have become a top priority for finishing. And I know personally from experience, my office
Is now
is
your
getting
your
moved
garage
to
is
the
now your
garage,
office?
and
Yeah.
that was always in, exactly, that was always in the plans, but just not a priority until until I had two kids on different Zooms in different rooms. I got kicked out. So I know the feeling, and I finished my garage. Spent I don't mind sharing that just to give some of your people an idea of how much it will cost. We insulated, drywall, paint, all that stuff, and then we're putting an air conditioner in there. And I would say in total we spent about 6,200 ish. So at least then people have an idea of what you might spend if you really
I
do it
need
with
your
insulation and all these
contractor.
other things.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna get
So
your contractor's name.
that, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should share it just to get. Although I know he's busier and I'll get up too. So, um, but the point I make is that that is something that is going to be kind of what we call a buyer or a personal preference. Not everyone, there are plenty of people out there who are going to walk in and see your garage all nice and spick and span with your epoxy floor and all this nice stuff and go, I don't care, I'm parking my car in here. There's other buyers who are going to come in and say, oh, honey, we can use this as extended living space. Those are two polar opposite views on those. The point I'm making is it's really difficult to extract a value on how much value you're going to get out of that in the market. I want to be clear. We consider those things marketing features, which is, if house A, and now the hard part is marketing features are not quite as popular as they usually are in a traditional market because you're not competing with anyone right now. So anything you have, if you have your garage done, people are going to buy it. If you have it not done, they're probably going to buy it.
Right.
So these marketing features in a normal market, you would say, hey, house A down the street that is a similar size and similar condition, but ours has a totally finished garage, that would help you kind of get the buyer to say, I'm going to write on this house, not that other one. So it's always funny to, the market truly kind of indicates what the value is for all of these things. But yeah, as far as, that being said, I think most people prefer their garage finish nowadays. I think that's a fair assessment, and a fair conclusion. One thing you have to remember, though, is that anything basically that's been built from about 2000 until now, so really the last 20 years, builders have been required to finish the garage anyway. So, it's not like you're finding a house that's got a finished garage and that's just a gem in the rough. All these houses don't. It's not as uncommon as we used to think. So it's hard to maybe justify how much value that really will bring in the market.
Right.
But like
Oh, we might have lost him. Hopefully he'll come back, and if not, he'll jump out and maybe jump back in. And
no sense for you
oh,
guys.
there he is. There he is.
Nope,
we lost you for a second, and then all of a sudden, oh, and there goes his picture. But there we go. He's back. So Cam, Heidi's actually got a question for you. Can you hear us?
Uh-oh.
Oh, I think
Frozen again.
I think we're frozen again. So Heidi, your question was, and I'm going to read it, and then maybe he'll jump back in.
Is it me freezing? I'm
there
sorry.
you go. No, you're okay. Okay, can you hear me though? Are you good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm caught up. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
just had a little bit of jumbling. So I'm sorry if I went too long there.
No, you're totally fine. So Heidi did have a question for you. It's a great question because we do get it a lot. She said, I know so many of our clients want to know why you can't use the current listings as comps instead of having to use the sales.
Great question. Very common question. We're doing a refinance. The homeowner tells me down the street there's a house listed for $900,000, and I say that's fantastic. But basically, what we do with listings, we can only we should primarily base our value on closed sales, because if you really think about it, and here's the argument as to why, you can list your house for anything you want, right? You may have a neighbor down the street who hears voices and the voices told him his house is worth $1 million when the last sale in your neighborhood was $620,000. So he could put it up for $1 million. That don't mean it's going to close there, and we all know that. So that's why while the pending or listings that we include in an appraisal, which is usually minimal, right? If we're writing a report with 6 comparables, 4 of those are going to be closed, primarily, and then 1 or 2 listings or pending sales. We consider those all kind of active properties. And And so the primary basis for your value is going to come from those closed sales. And as we both know, and as your buyers know, you don't know what the house is going to close for. You don't know if it's going to sell. We've done one where we got in, we sent in the appraisal, we didn't know, but the inspector actually found that they had foundation issues. Needless to say, that changed that sale, and they got pulled off the market. Everything stopped, and they had to obviously make some very hefty repairs before they were able to put it back on. So that's just one example, but that's why we can't use those as a primary basis evaluation. That being said, there are times where we've done appraisals and the actives and pendings are all closing at some point in the next week or two for higher than asking price, and so we've all been there. So if you can it's all up to the appraiser to present a good picture. If you want to, we have done appraisals where we've included 3 closed and 3 pendings or 3 listings and said, look, you can see based on the market, we kind of use those as our justification for coming in higher than, in our range of closed sales. We come in at the top end, and it's because the current actives or listings are kind of saying, look, here's where the market's currently headed, and so therefore we're coming in a little bit higher. But yes, the short answer to that question is you can't just say, hey, my neighbor down the street's listed for $750. The last sale was $625. So I think, we're worth $725, $730. It's like, well, let's see what your neighbor sells his house for first, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, let's see it where it actually closes, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so where I personally think that your best value is in if you have the money and you're trying to figure out what do I do with it, which obviously, again, if you're living in the home, and like my house, I just finished an update. It was built in the early 80s. Nothing had been touched in the bathrooms. The kitchen needed to be redone. The plumbing was starting to fall apart. So I had a lot of work to do, just typical upkeep because of the house. So I put in a lot of money that I'm not going to see come back. But, if I didn't have to do all of those things, where would I put my money if I wanted to see some sort of a return for it? I would add a bedroom. Sure. I would add a bathroom. And then the ADUs right now, which we've talked a lot about ADUs on this show before. And everybody asks us, what does ADU stand for? So it is give it to me. I know you know it, Cam.
Accessory dwelling unit.
Thank you. I always want to call it something different. Okay, accessory dwelling unit. But it is basically like your she shed or your man cave that's out in the backyard, or it's your mother-in-law's quarters, right? Something like that is going to bring in quite a bit more value. But the question that I have is, talk about appraising that, Cam, because, we've only got 6 minutes left, and we'll go over if we have to and keep going. And, the show on Go Country will finish on Saturday morning. And if they're listening, they can go back to YouTube and hear how this plays out. But this is a really hot topic right now, because they have finally come out and they're pretty much giving a lot of leeway in getting these put in and giving permits for them. And they are bringing added value, but it's not necessarily changing your property from, a 1 unit to a 2 unit. You're still a single family home. I know that comping it out with that is a little bit difficult, because you got to try to find a house that's got one similar, right? But talk a little bit about these ADUs, because it is a big thing right now. A lot of people are doing it. It is great for the property. It really is for the value. So give me your thoughts on that one.
Sure. And the good news on that front is just recently, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty confident that one of the sources I was reading was that I think Gavin Newsom has signed an executive order basically overriding any zoning regulation to allow you to build an ADU. So on any single family. So if you're in an R1 residential area, and I think LA County had some of this stuff already, but just to
but think about all of the homes. Think about all the homes with the associations. What about the HOAs that say you can't? I mean, is this something that's saying, sorry, HOAs, but you can?
I know. It's really, those are, like any kind of executive order action like that, you go, well, wait a minute, how's this going to work here or there? Those are all questions that are going to have to be answered. But LA County's been has been very, proactive about trying to get builders and single family homeowners that, making it super easy for them to convert their garages into an accessory dwelling unit and stuff like that. So appraising them is a challenge like anything else, and even like a pools being more common, so they're a little easier to appraise. But a house with an ADU is becoming more common, which is making our lives a little bit easier on the appraisal side to get you value out of the money you're going to spend, which is probably a pretty good amount to get one built or converted. So that's really what we have to do. Just like any sort of amenity, we have to do what's called bracket it, meaning we have a comp that has it, hopefully as close to possible every other characteristic, and then one that doesn't, and hopefully as close to possible with every characteristic. So that way you can kind of extract your market value from it. House A with an ADU sells for 650. House B, no ADU, everything else ideally similar or the same, and that sells for 625. There's your very simple market extraction of about $25,000 there. So that's really kind of how we look at them. You said they're becoming more common all the time, so that's helping us. But generally speaking, they do provide a pretty good amount.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess. I mean, I know
return
you
on
were.
investment.
Yeah, I know you were just giving us, an idea right now. You're just kind of throwing numbers out there to just kind of give us an idea to understand what you were explaining. But I can't imagine that a house with an ADU would only give you maybe $25,000 over a house without one. But then it's just like the pool; it's $100,000 pool, and it might give you 20 grand. So that
Yep.
it is. But again, at least you are getting a little bit more out of the investment that you're putting in. Plus, you're getting that added benefit of that
Yep.
extra unit back there.
Yeah, and the really difficult thing here is, don't be mad at your appraiser if he doesn't give you the value you think it's there or that you think it's worth. I mean, everyone's got their opinions, and that's totally fair. We expect that in our profession. We're coming in to give you ideally a very well-educated opinion on something. But we are also limited to the data that we have, right? And we both know, rarely can we tell just from MLS listing or talking to an agent how well an ADU was done. So that's the other thing. And like a pool, you could spend 40 grand on a pool and put in just kind of the most basic thing that you can, not very big. And then you could also spend 140 grand on a pool. So it's not always necessarily an apples to apples comparison. There's a big difference between throwing up some drywall and non-permitted, tapping off your water line to kind of get a sink in there, and then throwing a gas line in there that's connected to your, teeing off your stove in your house, and then
Right.
essentially making your garage kind of a haphazard ADU, compared to someone who goes out and really does it right, gets it permitted, and probably will spend, especially if it's detached, probably spend over 100 grand. So that's why, our job is to hopefully sift through that and realize, not all things are equal just because they have the same name. And so, it all comes down to a research project. And the problem is a lot of times agents aren't always very forthcoming in their MLS descriptions. They're very shrewd about how they write things to make them, they're salespeople. That's what they're supposed to do. They're
Right.
supposed to get them top dollar for their house. So I don't fault them for that, but sometimes it makes our job almost impossible to really gauge, what we're talking about and if it really is comparable.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind. But the ADUs are certainly a popular item right now. And the good news is more and more people are doing them. And even if they're not permitted, we can kind of give them a valuation based on if they're done well. And we can tell when they're done well or just done like quickly by
Right,
your
right,
uncle who
right.
happens to be handy.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Mortgage Mom Radio on Saturday morning, Go Country 105. We are done right now here, but we are going to keep going on YouTube. So Wednesdays at 5, watch us live. That way you guys don't miss any of the show. If you want to hear what me and Cam continue to talk about, go to YouTube right now, pull up the show from Wednesday, and you guys can continue to listen to me and Cam talk about appraisals, ADUs. I'm going to get into a really big one, which is the unpermitted work, like you were just talking about, the haphazard stuff. And so if you want to know, more about that, make sure you guys go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notification buttons, make sure you click that all. Give us a like on the video if you guys are watching us. We really appreciate that. And we hope you have a fantastic Saturday. But for everybody watching right now live, stay with us because this is the big question for you, Cam. So
Yeah.
you've got all of these people that are, they're looking at homes, and they did change the garage into a dwelling unit, and they did put in a stove with a gas line, and they did add a bathroom with a toilet and a shower. So now you've got sewer, right? And I get it. We're all trying to expand as many places as we can, and California's expensive, and we've got a lot of families that are, living together. You've got two families, multiple families living together in one place. So, how do you handle that as an appraiser when you walk into a home to appraise and you've got unpermitted work that is done?
Absolutely. So this is a loaded question. I'm gonna try not to be too long-winded with the answer, but it's kind of obviously a complex issue, which is why we're discussing it in the first place. First thing I always try to lay out at the outset is that one thing that HUD makes very clear is permits are not required in order for them to ultimately buy the loan or receive the loan, which is, HUD is kind of a parent of Fannie and Freddie, GSEs. We won't get into that, but HUD basically lays out the groundwork for how all these companies work and what they will accept, what they won't, that sort of thing. So HUD makes it very clear, verifying or verification of permits is not a requirement, and technically it's beyond the scope of work for an appraisal. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That being said, most appraisers are going to automatically go through the process of trying to verify permits. It's just part of their scope. It's part of their own personal scope of work, and that's totally fine. Most will. Now, that being said, while HUD will accept things without permits, not every lender will lend on stuff without permits, or at least allow us to give value to stuff that has not been permitted or work that has not been permitted. Especially when you're talking about something large like an ADU, or an addition or something along those lines. So that's good for buyers or borrowers to really talk to their lender, maybe find that stuff out ahead of time, because there are lenders who will not accept that stuff and will not accept value being given to those sorts of things. We argue with them because that's our job, is not to write an appraisal based on whatever the lender wants us to write. Our job is to write an appraisal based on what the market reflects. But I tell people that because you'd hate to find you're buying this house, it's got this unpermitted addition, but that's great. It makes the house bigger. It's done really well. It looks like it was original construction, and you're excited. You're paying more than the house next door, which is a model match, but doesn't have that. You think it's totally safe, and then your lender at the last minute is
Pull
telling
it
the
all
appraiser,
out. Pull it all out.
Yep,
Yeah.
no value,
Right.
no value. We won't lend on it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's
Not
just
only
good
that,
for
but you got
people
to pull
kind
it
of know
out
what
and
they're.
cap the gas line, and yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and that happens, and that's an FHA thing too, right? So that's another discussion that I'm sure we could go down that
Right,
rabbit
and
hole
a lot
too.
of I want people to understand when Cam is talking about HUD. HUD is different than FHA, so it
Yep.
is different. A lot of times those two names and words can be intermingled and interchanged, but they are actually different.
Yep.
HUD is the housing of urban
Yep.
development, and FHA is different. So
Yep.
FHA is a different kind of government-backed mortgage where they've got different appraisal requirements and property requirements. So. Sorry,
Yes.
I had to cut
Sorry.
you off there, but yeah.
I
It's it's
sometimes
something that happens. Yeah.
I assume everyone knows the difference, right?
Right.
Um, yeah. So I mean, when it comes to the unpermitted stuff, and we all know somebody who's done something like that in an unpermitted way because they didn't want to pay the permit fees and all this stuff, because they can add up very quickly. Especially, I mean, you'll spend $2,000 on permits for an ADU, no problem, maybe more depending on how you're doing it and where it is. So I get that people sometimes want to save that money. What we're supposed to do is try and assess the property in a way that, are the additions or is the unpermitted work being done and takes the property out of conformity with the neighborhood. That's kind of our biggest, kind of assessment. We'll look at it and say, so by that I mean, an ADU doesn't fall under that category. Converting your garage to an ADU or something like that is not going to put you in that category, because generally speaking, most areas now, everyone knows at least one person with an ADU. So that's good. But if you were, let's say your house is in a development that ranges from 1,500 to, I think, let's say the biggest model in that development is 2,100, right? Let's say you got one of the biggest lots in that development. You got a corner on a cul-de-sac or something. So you have a 12,000, 13,000 square foot lot. Everyone else is on like 8 or 7. And you're like, I got the room. I match all the codes. I'm going to go out and build a 1,000 square foot addition. Great. Sounds awesome. The problem with that is then now you are 2,700 square feet, and every other house, the biggest houses in your development are 21. You may think that's awesome. Mine's going to be worth the most in the development, no problem. And that's probably true, but it's probably not going to be in the realm of where you're thinking compared to the last house that sold or those other big houses. So, and when we're looking at something that's unpermitted, if you're so much larger than everything, you become what's called an overdevelopment for the area. and you no longer become what's called a conforming home, that's when you're going to run into some problems. Because we can't say, oh, well, yeah, the buyers would just look at this the same as they look at that house and that house. You know what I mean? You probably have to go to a different development to make your explanations, and that's not always going to fly, even if it is a good justifiable argument. But, not every lender is going to accept that. And depending on how your appraiser describes it and approaches it, just how they paint the picture could very well kill your deal. So, and they may not be doing anything wrong in how they approach it. So those are all things to keep in mind. I always recommend getting stuff permitted, but we all know people who haven't permitted things. One of the best ones I've ever seen was a contractor in Castaic, lived in a nice tract home in Castaic, actually put a second story on his house without permits, which was really fun when they went to sell, let me tell you. It's, when you change your house, a good example is people know in the Valley, you see people buying a 1,200 square foot house on a half an acre and tearing it down overnight, except for one wall, and then making that into a 4,000 square foot mansion. So that if you drive through, say, Studio City or Tarzana, you'll go down these old streets and you have, tiny house, 4,000 square foot, tiny house, and so that's just kind of the trend down there and is happening more and more. But in Santa Clarita and stuff like that, you just don't want to make that sort of mistake per se, because you're not going to have many developments where you could add on a second story. And if nothing else has a second story, guess what? You're probably not getting your money out of that.
Right.
It's going to be rough.
Right. Yeah. No. Okay. Well, hey,
So,
it basically, the bottom line is if you want to do it, get it permitted. I think honestly,
ideally,
at the end of the
I
day,
would do that.
yeah.
If not, do everything to code anyway. Everyone
Yes.
knows somebody who's a contractor, buddy. Do all the stuff to code, and then at least maybe even if you want to retroactively go get your permits, you take some pictures. Maybe say, hey, help me here. I don't want to tear it down or open all the walls, but here we did it all to code. I didn't have the money to do the permit. I don't know, whatever. Make up your story. Say you didn't know that you needed to get permits or something. But if you have all that and you're done to code, that gives an appraiser or a lot more leeway in giving it value. Because we can tell when someone's added in, I've seen people enclose stuff with plywood. I'm going, you got to be, help me out here.
Yeah. Workmanship like manner, I think is the code to live by, right? So if you're not going to get the permit, do it to a workmanship like manner, and make sure that you are doing it to code and that you're not Mickey Mousing your gas lines and your water lines and your sewer lines. That's probably not the idea. But if you do have something that is unpermitted, that does not necessarily stop us from lending on the property. So just keep that in mind. It's something that you need to call us in advance, talk to us about it, tell us what it is. I might even ask you to take pictures for me so that I can see what it is. And I may run it past my appraisal underwriter and see, how they feel about it before you get into contract and you put money into escrow and we spend money on an appraisal and you spend money on your physical inspection. And then, you end up having a problem with it. So, Matt, I can see you're staring at me.
Yeah, we got a few comments back here. First of all, John jumped in and said, "Woot, mortgage mama."
All right, John, thank you.
Dad is here, says hi. Was sorry he was working on the boat.
All right, more of my family, more of my peeps.
As always. Helen on Facebook says, thank you. And Deep in OC on YouTube says, I'm wondering on a down payment assistance program from, is that supposed to be Cal HFA?
Yeah, so it's Cal HAFA. Uh-huh.
Cal HAFA. When and if does it dissolve?
So I'm not too sure what he's asking. He might be asking if the program, the down payment assistance program of Cal HAFA is going to be dissolving. That is actually an answer I can't give. We had quite a few changes with down payment assistance this year right as COVID hit and the lending guidelines kind of started to tighten. Down payment assistance changed quite a bit. And in all complete honesty, I stopped writing them and offering them to my clients. I did not feel that the benefit that they were getting out of them was worth what they were going to owe back in return for having taken that loan. And so to be totally 100% honest, I have not looked into the Cal HAFA program in at least the last couple of months. I know Heidi's still online with us and she's watching, and I don't know, maybe Heidi's got an answer for us. I'm not sure. But I have not heard that it's dissolving. It could be happening. And just being totally honest, I haven't looked into it.
Sorry if everybody heard me scoffing in the background. That was not to your response, but John also on Facebook asking, is that a pillow with Manny's face?
Yes, that is a pillow with Manny and Mikey and Zeke's face. So yes, I got all of them in here with me. That is true. So anyway, honestly, Cam, thank you so much for coming on. I think this has been great. If there's anything there's so much, oh my gosh, I could have you on again. We didn't talk about closing cost credits and how that changes your appraised value. I remember we started off when we were just talking before the show started. There was something else that we had talked about that you're like, well, I think we should talk about this. Is there anything that I missed that I didn't bring up that you feel is really important for people to hear right now, especially today in the environment, purchases going crazy, 15 offers on every single house? Is there anything that you can give or you can add?
Yeah, I mean, the best really that I can offer, and I realize this will probably almost be more frustrating to hear than it would be helpful, but really the best is that what everyone needs to remember is, even though I know you've lost a couple of houses, these are obviously more for the buyers, this message, but I understand in most cases you've lost probably 2, 3, 4, 5 houses. You really want the house, you're willing to pay over asking, you've submitted your letter showing the beautiful picture of your family and why you really want the house. But when it comes to your appraisal, what we have to do is justify that price, or essentially prove that value is there on paper. And that's not always possible, even when you have 20 people willing to pay that price or more. Sometimes there's not a comparable pool that's there for you that really can let you put something together that is just bulletproof. And so that's what happens a lot of times if you're seeing an appraisal come in low, or something along those lines. That's a lot of times what's causing that. And I know most appraisers don't like, anyone who's been doing this for more than a month has submitted an appraisal that hasn't come in at value and experience the fun that comes after that. So I don't think there's any appraiser out there who truly enjoys bringing stuff in low, maybe, but I'm sure there's other issues there.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's probably some crabby ones that probably.
Yeah, there are.
There's always those people, right?
The profession is made up of independent thinkers, ideally.
Yes.
So that usually is a good thing, but can sometimes be a bad. But yeah, so we are limited to the data that we have available, and just remember that. So and that goes really kind of to all the topics: pools, ADUs, additions, permits or not, all that stuff. Really, we have a data pool that is not always as ideal as we want. And so sometimes you may not get what you're hoping for. And in some cases, it may end up giving you something that you're happy about, that, did higher than you expect. We've done those as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the bottom line is you guys are doing the best job that you can. It is a crazy market at the moment. And Cam, you're great as always. I appreciate it. This was great information, great advice. Anybody that's listening to us, you guys are more than welcome to give me a call if you have more information. You want to get a little bit deeper, please feel free to do so. The office here is 844-935-3634. If you haven't already, please like the video. It helps with my algorithms, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, which I don't think we had any viewers on Twitch today, but I'm working on that. I'm going to make it happen. But on YouTube, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, make sure you click the all button for me so you know when we come on. And with Facebook, make sure that you guys like the page. So, Cam, thanks again. Thank you so much for everything. I'm going to definitely have you on again. And anybody out there listening, if you guys have questions, please send them in to me. And I'll get them over to Cam and I'll get you answers. So we hope that you guys all have a fantastic evening. It is Wednesday. We are not on next week. Next week is Thanksgiving. We talked about this last week in the show. I am off come Wednesday. I am off. I cook Wednesday. I cook Thursday. I eat Friday. I eat Saturday. I eat Sunday. And I will be back in on Monday. So Mortgage Mom is closed from Wednesday to Monday. But we hope you guys all have a fantastic weekend this weekend. We hope you all have a great holiday for Thanksgiving. Cam, you're awesome. We love you. And we hope you guys all have a awesome evening. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.